let's jump into Nuke. Before I take you guys through the recommended tools that I use for denoising and degraining here, I actually want to have a look at the plate first and foremost. Looking at this plate, it's actually pretty hard to tell where the grain is, if there is any grain at all, and how much grain there is. One thing you can do to check the grain is by surfing through the color channels. If I hit R on my keyboard, brings up the red channel. G on my keyboard brings up the green channel. And B on the keyboard brings up the blue channel. When you view the image through one of these channels, you can see that the grain is more prominent and visible. Notice all of this scattering that's occurring here. That is what the grain and noise is, and that's what we will need to remove before we start any work. You can also play around with the gain and gamma sliders at the top here to brighten and darken the image. These aren't tools, these are just sliders within the viewer panel. If I also tweak these, you can actually make the grain become a lot more visible in shot. As you can see, if we go through the red channel, you can see there's quite a lot of grain going on here. Green channel not as much, and blue channel just a little bit. But you can definitely tell by tweaking the sliders up here as well as surfing through the color channels that there is grain present in this shot. In general, the darkest portions of an image will be where the most grain will be visible. There are two tools which are predominantly used for industry practices. Every Roto paint artist and compositor that I know of, myself included obviously, uses one of these two tools when reducing noise. The first one is the Denoise node, which is already pre-built and comes with Nuke. And the second one is Neat Video's Reduce Noise plugin, which is a third-party tool outside of Nuke. If you'd like your own copy of the Neat Video plugin, you can visit this website here, which I'll link below. It does cost for the full version. It's not cheap, unfortunately, but in saying that, you can get yourself a demo plugin. The beauty about this is that it's also compatible for a myriad of other software packages out there, such as After Effects, Premiere Pro, Final Cut, and Resolve. VFX hosts would be the version you would need for Nuke. In saying all that, if you do find work in the VFX industry, chances are the studio that you'll be working at will already have their own acquired license of Neat Video. To create a standard denoise node, which is this one here, you can hit tab on your keyboard as per usual and then type in denoise. Make sure you spell it correctly. I like what I just did there. So as you see here, denoise filter is the one that we need. As you can see here, here's the node. We've got source, noise, and motion as the pipes that you can use to input. I usually just typically use source. Noise, I'm pretty sure, is used for if you want to create and input your own custom noise map. And motion would be for, I'm pretty sure, it could be something to do with vectors or motion blur or some sort of tracking of some sort, but I could be wrong in saying that, but typically, in most cases, the source pipe is the one that we usually use. So what we'll do here, we've got our pipe connected into our plate here. I'll connect the source pipe of our denoise node into our plate. Now, as you can see, when I view the node, it doesn't have any sort of effect whatsoever. And this is because we get this little error up here. So the noise input has changed. Move the analysis region to analyze noise and press lock noise analysis to disable this message. So what's happening here is that it's telling us that we need to move and tweak this little region box here for this denoise node to work. So that is exactly what I'll do. I'll drag it. Now, typically with this region box, we would want to put it in an area on the plate that's flat in texture. And on top of that, if it's dark, that will also help the result of the denoise. So if we could just full screen this here, just have a look at this plate here. This particular area here, which I've got the region box over, will work. Ideally, if I can try and get the region box fit in here, where this dark curtain is, that would be fantastic too. But the problem I think this shot may have is it actually might be fine in this case, but I figured that because this curtain does move from time to time and it's not necessarily static, I think it may be a bit of a safer bet if we move this region box here. In saying that, I'm not saying that that's putting the region box here isn't a bad idea. I think just for reassurance and just for a level of certainty, I think this area here will be perfect. Now that we've got that region box set in stone, we don't have that error message anymore, which means that the denoise is working. If you actually want to see how it looks in comparison, we'll compare it. So if you hit 2 on the keyboard, we'll compare it with the original plate before the denoise. So I'll just full screen it here and alternate between 1 and 2. And as you can see, hang on, let me just... This is what you need to do whenever you're checking denoise and just grain in general. Just make sure that you're cycling through the color channels and tweaking the gain and gamma. So if I was to compare the two, you can see that there is something that is changing. You can see that the denoise is reducing a portion or a level of noise that's occurring in plate, which is exactly what we want. Looking at this though, if you were to ask for my opinion on whether this is sufficient enough of a result, I personally don't think so. I don't think it's removing as much of the noise as we should. And on top of that, it's actually removing a little bit of the plate detail. The byproduct when you denoise a plate is that you can accidentally or unintentionally remove some of the detail off areas that you actually want to maintain. So for instance, the actor's face, this portion of the chair here, as well as his arm. What you can do to fix this is you can click on the denoise node, and under the properties panel, we've got the denoise settings here. We can play around with different options here, and there's no real set in stone, tried and true setting to make your denoise look perfect or ideal. It's situational. It depends on the shot. In this case, I'm just going to tweak these different options and just sort of compare back and forth with the original plate and just sort of see what each of these options are doing to the plate. So I'm changing the source from digital to film. There's different noise modulations that you can choose from. Constant is doing some pretty crazy effect there. It's doing a little bit too much, changing the plate too much. You've got automatic and custom. To be honest, I don't exactly know what these mean in detail, but to summarize, they're just different types of noise profiles. We can also, here with these sliders, we can change the amount of denoise that is being occurring on the plate. So if I crank that up to all the way to 4, as you can see here, there's more of a drastic effect going on here. It is removing a lot more of the noise, but at the same time, we are changing quite a bit of our plate here. Like you see how we've got his the creases here in his jacket. A lot of the creases here have been sort of nuked a little bit. So I'll tweak that back down to around about 1 or 2. The roll off, it controls essentially how soft the overall denoise is. So if I was to increase this, all of these are very, very subtle. But as you can see here, I'm still not really getting a desired result in my honest opinion. Smoothness, which very similar to roll off. And yeah, I'm not really getting as better as a result as I can from where we are here. We've got a bunch of, so this noise analysis, that's essentially these coordinates of the analysis region. That's where the region box is. So you can manually actually tweak the position of that by playing around with the values there. So if I was to change this to say like on the y-axis to 2000, as you can see, the region box has moved accordingly. So if you wanted to manually tweak, or if you wanted to move your region box in incremental steps, then this is what you can use this for. Lock noise analysis is handy. I typically, if there's drastic camera movement, and in this case we don't have to worry, there's no real camera movement to speak of, but if the camera is moving to the point where the area of our region box is moving drastically, then what we'll need to do is enable lock noise analysis. Lock noise analysis will do its best to try and estimate the noise of that particular region over the course of the shot's length. Let's talk about the reduce noise node. Now, if you were to ask me which one out of these two I use in more cases than not, I usually go with the reduce noise node. So how you go about creating it, so just like every other node in Nuke, tab reduce noise. If I'll just quickly show you, as you see here, it should say reduce noise neat video. That's the one that you should be coming up for you if you've installed it correctly. What I'll do, I'll just quickly rearrange the node here. I'll connect the source pipe directly into the image, and I'll do a little comparison view here when I eventually have the denoise working. Now, straight off the bat, you're probably wondering why it actually isn't doing anything. As you can see, if you also disable this on and off, it is actually not removing any noise whatsoever. This is because we actually need to run through the options of the reduce noise to enable the denoise. So how you do that is you go here in the properties panel and click on prepare noise profile. When you do so, you'll be presented with this little window here. This is Neat Video's proprietary toolbar or window that will generate when you create your own denoise profile. Now, the first thing you'll be granted here, or you'll be presented with, is this little window here. So please specify the scan type of the current video clip. In 99.9% of the time that I've been given this option, progressive is the option that usually works for me. There's only been a rare case when I've needed to use interlaced, and that's when my denoise wasn't working when I hit progressive. But 9 times out of 10, progressive is the option to go with. Once you hit progressive, what you'll need to do is, if you go at the top left here, we've got 2 tabs. So we've got device noise profile and noise filter settings. You won't be able to get into noise filter settings because the first thing you need to do is create a profile. As you can see here, profile not ready. So the easiest way to create a noise profile is to hit auto profile here. Automatically build a device noise profile using the current video frame. So essentially, whatever frame that you are viewing in Nuke, when you enable the reduce noise and this window pops up, it will sample that frame that you left the viewer on in Nuke. I'll hit auto profile, and as you can see here, very similar to the denoise node in Nuke, we've got ourselves a little region box. Now, applying the same principles as the region box and the denoise, we want to pick an area that's nice and flat and predominantly dark if we can. For this case, I'm actually going to see if I can generate a result here in the area in black. One thing to point out, which is different from the region box and the denoise node in Nuke, notice how you see how there's like a noise level value at the top here. This actually tells you how much noise is present in that particular area of plate. So here is about 2.4, here is about 3, here is about 6, 10.5. So as you can see here, the noise is a lot more dominant on the actor here. Another thing that's handy and you should be taking note of, you see this little error message, or it's not really an error message, but it's a little warning that tells you that the area is not uniform. This will give you a bit of a reference to go, okay, this area is not uniform. This probably isn't the best area to sample your denoise from. If the message doesn't come up, then 9 times out of 10, the area will be perfect for denoising. I'm just having a look at the plate. I think when looking at the flat areas of the green screen here, roughly around about 2.5 is the average amount of noise level. As I was saying before, I do want to see if I can sample this area here. It looks like I can, which is good. Noise level of 2.9, and theoretically we should get a better result as what we did with the Nuke reduced noise, because we sampled up here. Because this area is darker, there are cases where you will get a better result just because of how dark it is. What you can do now, you can just hit apply and it will be complete. But what I tend to do is to go into the noise filter settings. Now what I can do in this window, you can actually see, I don't know if you can tell through compression, but when I went to the noise filter settings, the denoise actually enabled. You can have a look at these different panels here. So we've got temporal, spatial, and general. I typically just stick with the temporal setting. And what this radius slider is it will tweak how intense the denoise is. So if I was to increase this all the way to 5, I don't know if you guys can actually see the difference. So that will be 1. And if I increase it to 5, the intensity of the denoise is maxed. And you want to I try and avoid increasing the radius to 5, because just like with the reduced noise that I showed you previously, whenever you increase the treatment of the your denoise, it typically can muck around with your details in plate. I usually leave it around about 2 to 3. If you want to see it calculating, when you move it, you see how there's like a little process bar at the top here? Once you move the slider, and then once it is loaded at the top, like that, then that's how you know that it's been processed. Alright, now that our denoise in Neat Video is done, we can hit apply. And now Nuke will calculate our result. Comparing this to the original plate, we can see that the reduced noise has done a fantastic result. You compare that to, so if you compare the denoise that we used earlier with the original plate, it does reduce some of the noise, but there's still quite a lot of noise left, and it's also manipulating the plate details, which we don't want. You compare that to our Neat Video denoise, and across the board, pretty much most, if not all, of the noise has been reduced. We are losing a little bit of plate detail, but in saying that, it's not the end of the world, because typically when we reapply the grain back over our work, we will mask certain portions of the plate to maintain the original grain. So if I was to take this plate as an example, if we want to maintain the detail of this actor and his chair, when we reapply the grain later on down the track, I would create a mask or a roto of this actor and his chair, and I will mask the regrain with that, so that it will only be reapplying grain to sections that aren't the actor, if that makes sense. That will be something I'll dive deep when we get to the regraining part of the series. Overall, that's the whole process of denoising. The last thing we will need to do now, say if we're happy with our denoise, I like the look of this Neat Video denoise. We'll just compare it again, just to sort of see the effects of it. Yep, we're pretty happy with how that's looking. The next thing we'll need to do, or the last thing, will be to pre-comp our result. What's pre-comping? Pre-comp is another term for writing out or rendering our image. The reason why we would need to pre-comp our reduced noise is because the node is very heavy, and it takes a lot of processing power of your computer to calculate and create results. You can imagine if you were to start doing a full-blown comp setup or a paint removal with 3D tracking and projections and all that heavy stuff on top of this node, which is heavy as it is, then your workaround and your workflow would be very slow and you won't be able to be productive. That's why we will pre-comp this image with our reduced noise separately and then work off that once it's rendered. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for part 2 for grain matching, where I'll take you guys through reapplying the grain.